What's happening, party people? I am still at the Nellis Air Force Base, Mike McCallahan medical facility here with Diane. She is in the CCI unit, not doing well. Started having yesterday noticeable kidney failure, so they put in a request early this morning to transfer her to the medical facility and in the city where they have the capabilities of doing kidney dialysis, stuff like that. So that was approved 10 this morning. It's 8:15 p.m. Don't see any traction on that. They say they are waiting for a bed to be prepared for her before they will transfer her over there. So we've been waiting 10 hours now. So hopefully that'll happen soon. She is, other than that, pretty stable. But we do need to get some help with her kidneys soon. And Elizabeth made it in. Man, I guess early yesterday, somewhere around 11:15, she's been here through yesterday and through today. And just got back from going to have dinner, and we're just going to, continue to spend time with her, let her listen to her music, talk to her, stuff like that. She, surprising to me, was, even though she's sedated and with a respiratory tube and a feeding tube down her throat, she's pretty responsive to speaking to her, talking to her. People say unsensitive things in the room, she'd cry, stuff like that. They told me she was in a medically induced coma, but that's not true. I don't think so, not to be as responsive as she has been. Now, this afternoon, her responsiveness has dramatically decreased. Man, I just think she's finally getting some sleep other than just being sedated. So hopefully that's the case, and hopefully they will get her moved pronto. So appreciate you guys' time. I apologize if you don't want these updates, but I just think a lot of people ask, and so I do it. Just let you know where I'm at. I'm exhausted. Maybe I'll get some sleep tonight. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's clips. Welcome to Hanging Out with Robert. That's me. This video contains things that I encounter throughout the day. If for some reason I complete a task and you would like to see the details, you can click on the link in the description area below. This video also contains tips and tricks that I learned throughout the years. I plan on leaving this video accessible for about 30 days. After that, you can view it through my Patreon account. Thank you very much for watching. Like Vegas elevators, man, they are pretty fast. I'm going up to the top so I can get a good view. Guess I have to do this in the afternoon when the sun is on the other side. Go back down to where I'm supposed to be. This elevator's faster to the 9th floor than one hotel I was in is to just the next floor. Morning, 2012 XC90. We're going to start it off with a cabin air filter replacement. Man, Gilbert likes these white vehicles. He just bought a white S70.
XC90.
XC70, that's beautiful, and this is pretty new to his little herd here. Only Volvo. Let's get this cabin air filter in. Next, we're going to do the engine air filter. Pull that cover off. You can sneak it out of here around the base of that and unclip this one side and lift that thing off. T25s around the side, the back, and the front. None on this side. And you should be able to lift this thing up and sneak it out of there and sneak it back in.
That's not my filter.
Get the wrong one.
Yep. Say hi to Robert, Dad.
Hey, what's up, man? In this video, we're going to be replacing the fuel filter on a 2012 Volvo XC90. This should be the same for all of these vehicles from 2003 to 2014. Just in front of this rear tire here on the passenger side, US, you come up here and there's your fuel filter. This thing still looks like it has undercoating from Volvo, probably have never been replaced. If you look at the line, it has a push tab there and a push tab on the other side on both of these lines, and it has a pressure relief. Now, when you shut your car off, the fuel system should still be pressurized. So Volvo was kind enough to put a pressure relief valve here. You take this little cap off, you get a rag or something put over there so you don't get sprayed in your face. You put a drip pan on the ground and you use a screwdriver or something and push that little valve in, and it'll relieve the fuel pressure from the line system so that you don't get sprayed, massive spray, whenever you disconnect these lines. So let's grab the drip pan, relieve pressure from there, and then work on getting the lines. And anytime you're working with automotive fluids, you don't want that stuff in your face or eyes, especially if you are working with fluids under pressure. Fuel is a bad thing to get in your eyes, so you want to wear eye protection, wear gloves. Man, wear gloves all the way up to your elbow if you can. That stuff can irritate your skin, not good to absorb into your skin, but your eyes is real important, so get you some eye protection. Alright, I'm going to relieve the pressure from here. I have my drip pan, my rag, and my little screwdriver. Take that up there and push it into that little hole on the end of there. Let me use two hands. To my surprise, no fuel or pressure came out. So I may have a bad valve there. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and squeeze these two tabs, one on the front, one on the bottom, and massage this line off of here. Let me use two hands to do that, because you need to push these in far enough to get them. The squeeze and release came right off. Now I'm going to do the one on the other side. If you see corrosion build up down here, you may want to spray some penetrant on there and do a little twisting motion on the line before you pull it off. Volvo has seals down in there. Just pull the line off, and when you put the new filter on, you push it on till you hear it click. Now this is a 12 millimeter bolt there. I'm gonna have to put a socket on there and get that off, and then I'm going to pull that one off, put it on there, swap out. Make sure you get the filter flow in the right direction, and you may want to write on the filter when it was replaced. I think the owner manual may recommend every 100,000. Doesn't hurt to do it sooner than that. So this bolt that holds the filter in is a 10. It may be 12. Either way, remove this bolt, slide the filter out of there, put it back in, put the bolt back up in there. I like to take the lines off with the filter in place. That way it holds the filter while you pull the lines off. But if you're having issues with the lines, you may want to take it down, let it hang, and pull it off. Big thing is, if you start trying to pry these lines off, make sure you push these clips in on the end so you don't damage the securing clips. You don't want to be replacing fuel lines. That's no fun. The housing that holds the fuel filter up has a little tab there, so you slide the filter in until it touches this tab and then put it back up in there. The bracket has a tab right there. Help you guide it, putting it in right. Goes in that little slot right there. I normally write on my filters, and then I turn it in a way that I can see it if I glance at it. Just a reminder, when it was done, the owner's manual recommends every 120,000 miles. Once the filter bolted up in place, take the line and gently push it on there. You should hear it click. Do the other side. Now put that cap back on and you're all done. Now since you've pulled the filter and bled pressure off the fuel system, you'll need to repressurize the fuel system for the car to start. So you may have to crank it a couple times or crank it a little longer to pressurize fuel back up to the engine. What I normally do is turn the key to run and don't try to start it. turn the key off, turn the key to run. I do that 3 times before I try to start the car. So next you want to start the truck, come back here, make sure you don't have a fuel leak, and let it run for about 5 minutes. Check it again for a fuel leak. If you have no leaks, you've done a great job. If you have a leak, you got a problem. Already primed it twice. Now he's going to try to start it. Fired right up. No leaks. We'll check it again in 5 minutes. Good to go. Now, if you took the fuel cap off, you want to put that back on before you try to start the vehicle. We're going to replace the front lower hydraulic engine mount on this XC90. It's a 6-cylinder version. The mounts go bad occasionally, not often. Normally, if they go bad, you can see the wire around them breaks. It's all the way down there. You see that wire around it right there in the middle? That'll break. And sometimes they'll leak hydraulic oil because they are filled with hydraulic oil. What you want to do is remove your air scoop. Reach down there, take loose your 15 millimeter. Come under the vehicle. Take loose the 14 millimeter in this hole here. Take this little cover off. Take your transmission mount loose here. Jack up the engine enough to get that mount out. That's the mount right there. Put your new one in place and put everything back together. After you get this airbox intake scoop off, you pull those 2 screws, maneuver it out. You'll need to remove this hose here. You got a 7 millimeter there, 7 millimeter down there. Then hopefully the 7 millimeter you can reach from the bottom to pull this tube out, because you're not going to get anything on that nut on top of that mount with this in the way. I had to get that bottom clamp loose from under the vehicle. So let me pull this tube out of here. Maneuver this air tube out of the way. Not sure if you'd have been able to get that air tube out with this thing still attached to it, or what this thing even is, but got the air tube out of the way. Now I can reach this bolt here. So the splash guard has 2 screws on the back side of it, 2 on the side and 2 on the front. Remove all those. That splash guard will drop down. Now you got this transmission torque mount here. It looks like it's got 2 12 millimeters on the back side of it. You want to take that loose because you don't want that stopping you from jacking the engine up. Now you want to put a piece of wood or something along the front side of the engine. Jack the engine up a little bit, since we got both of these mount bolts loose. And when it lifts the engine up off of the mount, you swap the mounts out and reverse everything you just did. When I took these 2 bolts out, this thing was flopping around, so this mount is busted. It shouldn't just flop around like that. It needs to be replaced. Those 2 bolts were 13 millimeter. You pull those, let this hang, and then you could jack the engine up enough to get this mount out. Now, if your mount is flapping like that and you want to replace it, word to the wise, go ahead and take these 2 loose. These are 18s. Turn this mount so that you can stick a screwdriver or something through this hole to push this zip tie out. Because if you try to pry it out like I did, you'll break that zip tie. So, no big deal if you break it, but if you can keep it intact, you want to do that. A lot of people call this the transmission torque mount, but on the parts list, it is the lower engine torque rod. Well, with very little effort, the whole thing is shot, both mounts. Next, we're going to break the lug nuts loose with the vehicle on the ground. Jack the vehicle up by that post right there. Put a jack stand under it. That's where I put the jack stand. Lower the vehicle onto the jack stand. Remove the lug nuts. Then remove the wheel. Now you got those 4 bolts there for the engine mount. On this mount right here, what you want to do is remove the two on the back side, the one on the front on the bottom, and then loosen this one. This one has the slide in it so you can lift the engine up and down in there. If you just remove all four, the engine will fall down. Can't tell, but this mount may be destroyed as well.
What? I'm getting all kinds of...
Maybe not. It looks like it's hooked in there okay. With 3 bolts out and 1 bolt in, we should be able to jack the engine up now, unless that torque arm back there will stop us. I jacked the engine up until it started lifting the truck off of the jack stand back there. And got the mount loose, but it's just barely not coming out. So I'm going to try to pry it out with my little pry bar. The tip of it is getting stuck in the mount bracket. I guess I could bust that mount bracket loose if I can't get it out. That'll be easier than taking 2 more engine mounts loose. If I can't get that to pry out, I'm going to have to take that bracket loose. It looks like I got 3 bolts holding that in. That pry bar did pop that mount loose. Now I'm going to try to put the replacement one in its place. You see that little point on there has to go toward the back of the car. Oh, that's the throttle body I took apart. Barely enough room to get this mount in here. What we did was put the top of the mount in the hole, got the screw started, then swiveled the bottom of the mount toward the passenger side, got it over the subframe, and then from underneath I took that sledgehammer and that chisel and tapped it toward the driver's side, the bottom of it in toward the driver's side, and it fell in place in the bottom. So now I'm going to turn it counterclockwise to get the guide pin to fall in the guide pin hole. Then I should be able to put the nut on it, the bolt in the bottom, and secure it. There it is in position. I'm gonna go ahead and lower the engine down on it since I got the guide in the hole on the back side of the bolt, and the hole on top of the mount should be pointing straight toward the front of the car. So it should be like this in the vehicle, this hole pointing toward the front of the car, the guide in the bracket, the bolt through the bracket. I'm gonna lower it down on there and put the bolt in the bottom and the nut on top. As you can see, this mount is not leaking or anything, and the metal strap is in position. This mount is still good. Sometimes people like to replace them just for comfort, a little bit more comfort. It's got a little cracking on the surface of the rubber, but man, you could drop this thing from Mars and hit the ground and still be fine. Tighten the bolt in the bottom of the mount before I let all the pressure off of the engine with the jack, just in case I had to twist it around a little bit. Now I can get the bolt on top secure, but before I do that, I'm gonna re-secure this mount over here. So I'm gonna let the engine down enough to put all the bolts back in this mount. Got that top nut torqued down. I got the bottom bolt torqued in. I got the bolts under the crank, that mount torqued down. I'm gonna put the air tube back on and that little baffle box, whatever that's for, and keep moving forward. When you need to check it out. Willie Gilly got the master oil filter. Whoop whoop. Motor oil dipstick. Got 5 quarts in so far.
5.9.
Get out of here.
That's what it takes.
You using that Google stuff? You need to be using the owner's manual stuff. Torque value for the oil filter housing is on the housing 25 Newton meters. The capacity for the 3.2 engine is 7.18 quarts. Next up, brakes. I'm going to replace the brake pads on here. As you can see, the brake pads are getting worn. The pad material is not as thick as the backing on it, but probably still got 10-20,000 miles left on there, but we're going to go ahead and replace them. So we're going to break that loose, take the holding pins out, pull this bar off the calipers, and pull the calipers off. All right, Willie Gilly put about 100 miles on this thing today, and we're back to do the brakes on it. So the first thing I'm going to do is break the lug nuts loose on the passenger side, both wheels, get it up on jack stands, and pull those wheels off. And we got boxes of gloves. I jacked up the vehicle by the jacking point. I put a jack stand there. I put the back jack stand there. That's where I put the rear jack stand. I already broke the lugs loose. I'm going to take the front wheel off first, do the front brake. Here, you got to pry this up and then pull that out. If you don't pry that up, you're not going to get that out. Once you get that off, you pull the two dust caps off of your caliper bolts. Set those down there. Now you want to compress your caliper piston if you can. So I normally wedge something in here and pull the caliper this way. Try to compress those pistons as much as I can. See them extended there. I start prying right here on these to get a little space. Once I get space, top and bottom, I pry here, collapsing the pistons. Now we're going to put the 9mm in there and take those two screws out. Then we'll pull the caliper away from the rotor and the caliper bracket. That's how much meat is left on there. See that? That's the meat left on the pad. This is the pad backing compared to what you see there. Probably 5 times as much. So this pad may have had maybe 5,000 miles left on it. Unless you're racing, then it could be a week. Tighten your pins in, put your dust caps on. I did lubricate those pins with brake parts grease. Put the caps on both sides. Put this thing on. Wedge them up. Push them in. Should be good to go. Now we did have an issue with compressing the calipers and oozing brake fluid out of the brake fluid reservoir because the brake fluid was topped off and it was spilling down on the ground. So you may want to take the cap off your brake reservoir if somebody's topped it off while the brake pads was wearing, and take a little bit of that out with a turkey baster or something. Now in general, when you put your brake pads on, you fill up your brake reservoir. And if you ever get a low brake reservoir light, it's probably because your pads are just about totally worn out. So you may not want to overfill that if your pads are low, or take a little bit out with a turkey baster when you go to do your brakes. Somebody lost a bleed pin dust cap on that. We got these dust caps on. I'm going to go do the rear brakes. First thing you want to do back here is pop these out with a screwdriver. Ah, there it is. Next, you pull these dust caps off, put a 7mm Allen hex in there, and pull those two bolts out, and try to compress your caliper before you pull those out. I got the piston compressed. Now I'm going to take the slide pins out, pull the caliper away from the bracket. Grease the pins, put them in, put the dust cap in, put this springy thing back on, peel the backing off of that pad, but on the caliper I actually scraped the old tape and glue off of it and cleaned it, wiped it with brake parts cleaner so the caliper was nice and clean. Then I peeled that backing off, stuck it in the bracket. Then I put the caliper over there, so whenever we go to start the car and move it, we're going to hold the brake down for about 30 seconds or something, so this caliper will add heed to that pad, and that stops that honing vibration noise you hear when you hear brake squeal. If you feel that this information was useful, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can subscribe to my channel so that you will get notifications of future videos that I post. You can follow me on Twitter, and if you need to contact me directly, please visit my website. And if you have any questions, leave them below, and someone or myself will reply to them. Again, thank you very much for watching.